everyone, and we welcome you once again to Shifting Tides. Today, we bring to you Rex Thomas from Brazil. Rex is a shaman, a healer, and a personal development trainer. His personal story is completely going to blow you off. It's nothing short of a fairy tale. So we welcome Rex Thomas. Welcome, Rex. Lovely to have you on Shifting Tides.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here.
Yeah. As you know, Rex, Shifting Tides is about that moment in your life. It's like when the tide of change happens and it just sweeps you off your feet and your reality is no longer the same. So I do know that you've had this very colorful and adventurous life, to say the least. So in your entire experience of whatever you've done, what is that one moment of shifting tides? And before that, I would really like you to tell us, what does shifting tide as a word imply for you? And then you can go on to your experience.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that word, the expression shifting tide. And it brings an image to my memory of life itself. You know, what I see sometimes when I imagine life, I see all of us, all of humanity, each and every one of us in a small boat, and we are all sailing on the high sea. The sea is a quantum field, is what connects all of us. Mm. And the individuality is the boat we are in. And even among families, you will see a group of small boats sailing together, and that's a family. They are still all in a different boat. Now, sometimes the sea is calm and we can talk and then we can sail. And then sometimes, which is the nature of things, the nature of existence, the waves would come, the tides would rise, and then it's time to bring attention to our boats, to ourselves.
True.
And then we have to hold tight. True. And then sometimes the tide will get stronger and the waves are stronger. And then maybe it's raining, maybe it's dark, maybe water is coming into the boats. And those are the very difficult moments of life. And those are the moments I actually see when I think of the expression shifting tide. Okay, it's dark. The boats are rocking, water is coming into the boats. You can't see the next person close to you. So you just have to have faith and wait and see what happens after. True. So at the end of the storm, the tide has shifted. What remains, you have to look around, see who is still close to you. And the first thing you want to do is to remove the water from your boats, the water that entered into your boats. And those are what I consider the toxins that eventually comes into our emotional field during the moments of shifting tides. And then we have to take care of those first. We have to empty those. And then afterwards, we look around and see, okay, who needs help?
So beautifully explained, Rex. It's so beautifully explained. I mean, I think I'm after such a long period of doing shifting tides, this is the first time I've got this kind of an explanation. Thank you. Thank you for showing us that perspective. Really nice. And that's why they say that from a breakdown, there's a breakthrough.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, what is life? What is life all about without adventure? That is the reason we are here.
Absolutely. Yeah. So talk about your boat. Boat.
Yeah. You know, I've always loved adventures. I've always loved traveling. I've always loved changes because I have, right from a very young age, I was born in Nigeria. I'm from the east of Nigeria. I was born in a town called Enugu. Enugu means on the top of the mountain. My family from the Igbo tribe, traditionally we have a very close family unit. Lots of love in the family. And I remember when I was a little boy living close to the airport, I would go out in the fields and I would watch the planes taking off. And I remember I used to wonder, where is that plane heading off to? And that one, where are they heading off to? And I can imagine all of these planes heading off to all parts of the world. And I could imagine myself in those planes heading off to all parts of the world. And I've always wanted that adventure. But actually the shifting tide for me did not come from the travels. It came from a spiritual adventure. Mine was actually a spiritual adventure. I know some people have these other kinds of adventure in their life where things that they can logically easily explain happened, and then it brought about a lot of changes in their lives. But mine cannot easily be explained to the logical mind. And I moved over to Brazil, where I live in Brazil now. I live close to São Paulo, where I have my institute. And I used to travel a lot, back and forth, North America, Africa, and South America. And I used to question life. I still do. I question a lot of things about life, about existence. I remember back when I was a little boy, I was an altar boy in the Catholic Church. And I had this mentor. His name was Father John Hannon, and he was from the SMA. He's passed away now. And I used to travel around with him to celebrate Mass. And one day we were in his car and I looked at him and I said, God created us, right? And he said, yeah, he was driving. And he said, yeah, my son, God created us. And then I kept silent for a while. And then I looked at him again and I said, okay, who created God? And he looked at me. I remember he said, son, there are some questions in life we just can't answer. And this is one of them. Okay, I remember that response triggered a response within me. And the response within me was, no, there has to be an answer to everything. And I remember that was the moment when I took it upon myself to delve into the mission of understanding life. Okay, and this is interesting because up until then, and up until the moment when I had my shifting tide, I used to believe that understanding life has to be in resonance with your cognitive perception of what you think life is about. So when he said, who created God? I mean, that is one of the questions we have no answer to. I thought, but I didn't know it back then. In my cognitive perception of life, there has to be an explanation. So I went through life with that perception of there has to be a logical explanation to everything, until the moment I discovered that logic is just a limit of perception. There is another.
So true. So true. Absolutely. I learned it the hard way. The hardest way possible.
So I had to discover that on my own. And that's happened in Peru.
Okay.
And this happened around 23 years ago, almost 24 now, it'll be 24 years. This year, 2021, July, will be 24 years. I was traveling to Peru. I was in the middle of researching. I was studying philosophy, and I was just researching about the practical, the possible practical applications of the quantum field therapeutically. How can we therapeutically apply the laws of the quantum field? And I was researching that to create a technique that later became known as the nexus therapy. So I had to take time off. And I was living in São Paulo city. Okay. Now I live out of São Paulo city in a farm. And I was living in São Paulo city. I was walking down the avenue. It's called Avenida Paulista. Is the largest street avenue in South America. And then I saw this store that sells travels to Peru. Okay. And I believe that was the first time I saw the picture of Machu Picchu, and I just stood still. I stood right there, and something just pulled me into the store, and I asked about this place. And they told me, oh, it's in Peru, it's this and that. I said, when is your next trip? And I bought it right away. Oh, wow. Took my backpack. Wow. Wow. And off I went to Peru. And when I got to Peru, Peru back then was different. Cusco, the city of Cusco, everything was very rustic. It's not as touristic. And you don't have all these 5-star hotels you have now. So I went off with a group of 10 people. Each of us was from a different country. Okay. And we went hiking across what is known as the Inca Trail. Yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah. So the Inca Trail is like a 4 days hike across the Andes. And we would sleep out in the mountains, and you could see the starry nights. It's really beautiful out there. Now, something happened the second night, and that's exactly is the point where my shifting tide started. Okay. You get to hear. If I have to pinpoint where it started, it was that night, the second night. We were camping at the foot of a mountain. It's one of the highest mountains in the Andes on the way of the Inca Trail. And we had to climb that mountain the next day and then get to the other side of it. So we were camped, resting, and you could see the silhouette of the mountain was really dark against the night sky. And then suddenly we saw this light coming from the other side of the mountain, and it just kept coming, and it stood right above us. You know, the image that would help you understand what I'm saying is a stadium, a football stadium. Okay. Fully lit at night. A football stadium fully lit at night. And it was so huge, and it was there right above us. I would say they're about 300 meters at most. Oh, and wow. It was so huge. I have never heard of anything like mothership up until then. And later on, I got to know that was it, you know, an alien mothership. The sea is very common in that region, but it just stood hovering over us. I don't know for how long. I remember that we were all just standing still looking at it. I don't know how long we stood, really. I lost track of time. It might have been seconds, it might have been hours, I just don't know. I just knew that we were just standing right there looking up to the sky. And then suddenly, the light just dimmed and it was gone. Oh my God. And all I could hear around me was, wow, what was that? And then our guide said, yeah, this is common around here. But he said, I've never seen one this close. And I said, what is that? And he said, yeah, it's an alien ship, what we call an unidentified flying object. I think they are more like identified flying object these days.
Yeah, this is such a filmy drama. You only see it in films. Okay,
Yeah.
then?
So, and we spent the rest of the trip to Machu Picchu just talking about this. And then we got to Machu Picchu, and I went down to a small town called Aguas Caliente.
Okay.
And there was no hotel back then in Aguas Caliente. It was all the people's home. People would just take you into their home. And then there is this street with a cobblestone leading out to the hot water spring. And it was late at night, and I just wanted to go to the hot water spring and bathe. And there was just this one store that was open, and lights coming out from the store. And the owner of the store was there. His name is Herbert Jordan. If ever you are in Aguas Caliente, look up Herbert Jordan. My story began with him. And then we started talking. And he got really interested in knowing me. And he began to tell me his life story. He had contact with beings that identify themselves to be Pleiadians.
To be Pleiadians?
And yeah, Pleiadians.
Okay.
He said, yeah, Pleiadians are star beings. They're from the
heard of them.
the system. Yeah, they refer to themselves as Pleiadians. And he said he was in his store one day, and this lady, red-haired, walked in, and she knew his name. And she asked him to carve out, because he works with arts, carvings, stones, to carve out a 3-level pyramid. And then when he was done, he should take it to where she was staying. And he was thinking, okay, I'm gonna charge. And then she said, yeah, I know the price. You're gonna charge this. And he said, yeah, how did you know? She said, don't worry, when it's done, take it to my room. And he did. He carved the pyramid. And when it was done, he took it to where she said she was staying, but she had already left. So he took it back to his store, put it on the table, and there he was wondering what he was going to do with this. Some days after, a couple of men walked into his store, kind of redhead also, and they sat down and they just called him. They said, Herbert, the lady who asked you to carve this pyramid sent us to talk to you. And he said, yeah, so who are you guys? And, it's like someone would come in and say, I am from Russia or something like that. I'm from so far away, distant town or something like that. And just they sat there and they said, we are Pleiadians. We are from the star system, Pleiades.
Oh my God.
Yeah, just like that. And they opened a bag that was tied. They opened it and they brought out a flat blue stone and they put it on his table. And he said, what they showed him is kind of like what we know today as the cell phone or the smartphone. Okay. Yeah, back then, I'm talking of like almost 24 years ago, we didn't have that.
Yeah, exactly.
And he said it's similar to that, but it's much more sophisticated. It was like a crystal, and it was very flat and blue, just like you would see a flat blue crystal. And they laid it out on the table, and suddenly he could see the star system. And he could see the star system, and he could see the stars moving around. And then there they showed him, we are from here. And they just said it like, okay, we're like your next door neighbor or something,
My goodness. My goodness. I feel I'm listening to a fiction story. So unreal. So surreal. And okay, then?
That was why I told you that, my shifting tide is not something that logic would easily
Exactly.
understand.
Yeah, but
So I had to say that before.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
but this is fascinating, and I'm sure everybody who's watching this is going to be blown.
It's good we talk about this in such a natural way, because this is the reality of we are part of something larger. Our
Yes.
planet Earth is part of a system, and it's time we begin to see the planet as just like you would see your country, and then the next country close to you is just the next planet right there beside you. I think that's a good way to start thinking and seeing the world we live in. Yeah.
Exactly. And then what happened?
Okay. Yeah, there we were talking about his experience. And the next day in the morning, I went back because we were there until around like 1 in the morning. I was tired, so I went to sleep. The next morning, I went back and we continued to talk. I was sitting right across from him, and there was this table between us. And I had my back to the door. And then suddenly the door opened. A man walked in. I just felt the door open and someone walked in, and he stopped talking. And I could see his eye moving, following the man around the store. So I turned around to look at this man. He was tall, kind of like brownish reddish hair. And then he looked around the store, he turned around and he came straight up to me. He stood right in front of me and he said, will you be here in the next couple of hours? I need to talk to you. And I said, yeah, I will be leaving for Cusco shortly. There is a train leaving for Cusco and I'll be on that train. And he looked at me straight in the eyes and he said, don't leave without talking to me. I am here to talk to you. And I said, yeah, well, if you catch me before the train leaves, we'll talk. So we just kept talking. We went for lunch and then I went to the train station. He never came back. And there I was at the train station, waiting for the train to come. And then suddenly he walked up to me and he stood right in front of me. He said, you didn't wait for me. I said, yeah, but I told you I had to catch the train. And he looked at me and said, why are you here in Peru? And we were talking in English. He said, why are you here in Peru? I said, I don't know. All I know is that I've spent my life looking for something and I go where my heart draws me to go. And I just felt I have to be here. So let's just call it a research. I'm here on a research. And he said, yeah, you have questions. And that is why I'm here. I have answers for you. And he went on first to tell me about me. So he started telling me about me. And he told me what I do and about my life, about how I feel and everything. So I was looking at him and I am very skeptical. And this is the reason why I can talk about this today convincingly, because I knew me back then and I know me today.
Yeah.
I am one of those people that you really, really have to show me, prove to me, and then show me again, and then prove to me that this is real. And he knew that.
Oh my God. Okay.
He started telling me, and I was thinking, yeah, anyone can know this. You just have to research about someone and you can have all of this information about someone. I still wasn't convinced anyway. Well, still, I didn't know who he was. And then things started happening. The train arrived, and this was the high season, and there were lots of people at the train station. Back then, the train was called the Pullman train. And it's different from the kind of train that you have today in Peru, which is a lot more touristic. And this train will have like lots of people are struggling to get on it, and some people sitting, some standing. Yeah. So people were pushing and shuffling and trying to get on the train. I was tired. I had this big backpack. So I decided not to get on that train, but he did. He got on the train very quickly. And then the train left and he was gone. And there I was standing at the train station. And there about some, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 minutes later, he walked up to me again.
But he had already left in the train.
Yeah, he did. He walked up to me again. And then I was looking at him like, what happened? You got on that train, you left. And he looked at me straight in the eyes and he said, I remember this up until today. The way he said it, sometimes it's not what someone is saying, it's how they are saying it that really catches your attention. And he looked at me straight in the eyes and he said very slowly, you thought you saw me get on the train. And that was where he began to teach me about illusion and reality. Now, the next train came, and this time I was right in the position to be the first person to get on that train. So when I got into the coach, I took a second to look behind me because there was no one in the train. I was the first getting into the train. When I looked behind me, he was just standing there looking at me with this smile on his face. And then when I got into the train, I saw him sitting at the last seat in the car. She was already there. I looked back, he was not there anymore. And he was sitting in the train. So he waved at me. And I walked up to him and I felt safe. But then at that moment, I knew that something was different here. He was beginning to show me, not just tell me. And he knew he had to show me, not just tell me to convince me. So I sat across from him and he began to tell me, he said, you are here in Peru because you want to know about the origin of the existence on this planet, and you want to know about this world, and you want to know about the future of this planet. And this is the reason why I'm here. And he began to tell me about the ancient civilizations before the Inca civilization. He said the Inca civilization is pretty new. He said, what you see here in Peru were not made by the Incas. There were civilizations before them. And he began to tell me about those civilizations that goes way back to what some people would refer to Lemuria, Atlantics, and all of those ancient civilizations.
Yes.
Yeah. And then he began to tell me about what is happening in our world today. And he began to tell me about what we consider reality. And he told me that the human eyes can only see there about 3% of what is really around us. And then whatever is beyond those 3% we call illusion. And what is within the scope of he said actually 3.6%. That is the maximum we see. And everything we see within the scope of 3.6% we consider reality. And everything that exists outside of the scope of 3.6% that we don't see visually with what we call the human eyes, we call illusion. So if someone comes to you and said, I can see this and that, which is something that they are seeing beyond the scope of 3.6%, we would say, oh, you are delusional. That is an illusion because the rest of us can't see it. And he began to tell me, and this was a 3-hour, almost 4 hours train trip to Cusco, and it was dark. and people were standing in the train talking, and then something very strange happened. He sat right there across from me talking, and I could hear the sound of the train, the sound of people talking. And then suddenly I couldn't hear anything. There was this deafening silence around me. I couldn't hear the sound of the train. I couldn't hear people talking. I could only hear his voice. I looked around me. People were still talking. The train was still moving. He didn't take his eyes. He didn't take his eyes off me. I could only hear his voice talking. And it was like, you know, when you begin to question if you're still within the reality that's, as you know, reality. I was, at this moment, I was totally out of what I considered reality. But at the same time, everything seemed and felt so natural. And then I could hear him. And then suddenly the sound of the train came right back. The sound of people's voices came right back. And he was still talking because his mouth was moving, but I couldn't hear him.
My goodness. Oh my goodness. Could you say that at that moment you were existing in two parallel universes?
What I figured, no, not exactly. But what I figured happened was he was doing this on purpose. And the sound altered 3 times, from hearing the sound of just his voice, and then silence around me, and then the sound of the train and people talking, and then silence from his voice. This happened 3 times, alternating 3 times. And then later, some weeks after this experience, I understood what happened, because I began to remember, weeks after, I began to remember what he said when I couldn't hear his voice. Okay. So, yeah, he was actually dividing information. So what he wanted me to remember right there, what he wanted me to remember later, and what he wanted me to remember long term. So that was what he was doing. You know, it's like you would zip information in codes and then program those information so that someone can access that information at the right time. That was what he was doing. And years later, I began to understand the quantum field. And I began to understand that the quantum field is a super technology, and is an information technology. It's all about light and sound. And we are on the verge, as a human consciousness, we are on the verge of understanding that technology, and we can use it. We can use it to better our life. We can use it for information. And we really don't need the kind of technology we have in the world today. They are very primitive. We can communicate without the telephone. We can communicate through the quantum field. And there are many ways to do that. So he showed me this. And
maybe that was your preparation ground to understand your journey ahead, which happened with ayahuasca, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when we got to Cusco, now I really have to tell this part of the story.
Yes, absolutely.
When we got to Cusco, I went to the inn where I was staying, and he had no place to stay. So I asked him where he was going to sleep. He said, "No, don't worry, my friends are arriving tonight." And then we were standing out in the street in the city of Cusco, and I was going to say goodbye to him. And the street was empty, just the two of us. And he looked at me and he asked me, "Have you heard about the Pleiadians?" And then And then I looked at him and I said, yeah, for the second time in 24 hours. And he looked up to the sky and he showed me the star system. He said, that is the Pleiades. And then he walked away. Okay, here we go. The next day in the morning, I went to town to buy some souvenirs. And he was there in the first store I went into. He was there with two of his friends. And he walked up to me and he said, will you be in your hotel room at 3 in the afternoon? I said, yeah. He said, please be there. Wait for me. I want to show you something. Exactly 3 in the afternoon, he walked in to my hotel room. And he said, yeah, you've been working most of your life with therapies, and I want to show you something I'm sure you'll understand. Would you give me the permission to just ask you to lay down and close your eyes? I looked at him, I felt safe. I said, okay. So I laid down and we were in the room and I closed my eyes. And then suddenly he said, okay, let's go. And then I opened my eyes. We were still in the room, in the hotel room. Then I looked down at the floor and there was this rectangular opening in the floor with stairways leading into the earth.
No
I looked
way.
around me. We were still in the hotel room. He was standing right beside me. And he began to walk down the stairways into the earth, and I followed him. And I am very, I pay close attention to sensorial perception, and I could feel the heat, the cold, the smell, everything around me. It was real. And as we began to walk down the stairs, we went into a tunnel, and we walked down the corridor. It was dark. And we continued walking. And then I could see light, rays of light at the end and stairways. And then the temperature changed. It was hot, it was warm. And as we began to walk up the stairs, we walked right out close to the pyramids in Egypt.
God.
Yeah. And time, space, as we know it, was totally different. And I recognized that the pyramids we just recently built, they have this covering that was like shiny, dark gray stone that reflected the sunlight. And the Nile River was flowing just very close to the pyramid with some trees that looks like palm trees. And today you don't have the Nile close to where the pyramids are, but they did have the Nile close to the pyramid back then. And there was this man writing on a table on a scroll, and he would wrap the scroll and take it into the pyramid. And when I looked at this man, he didn't have to tell me. I knew it was me. And he said, yes, that is you. And the information you are writing, you here is what you are beginning to remember in this existence. And he said,
He
okay.
actually took you into that time and space of another birth.
He did.
He did.
He did.
And do you physically recall that? I mean,
I did.
it depends now that you're speaking about it, but do you feel that you experienced it even now on a physical level?
Yes. You know, the man I saw that I knew instantly that it was myself. You know, if someone is listening to this and they're having a hard time understanding this, it's high time you begin to really question reality. The configuration of what you perceive as reality is much more than what you think. Time, space, it's not like, okay, let me make this clear, because some people will be thinking, oh, you're talking about past life, reincarnation. No, there is no past life. I learned that, the phenomenon is real. We do exist in different bodies, but it's not past, because there is no linear time. So if there is no linear time, everything is happening all at once. So the terminology past life or future life doesn't make sense. So it's parallel life. Okay. So what we have is parallel existence. So it's not like we die and then we reincarnate in a linear time frame, because there is no linear time frame. There is no past, there is no future. The concept of time, the reality of time is happening all at once. So it is not past, it is not future, it's parallel, it's happening all at once. So that was how I knew this was another version of me in a parallel time space. And I could access the information that he was writing right there. So then this guy looked at me and he said, okay, there is just one more place I need to show you. Are you ready? I said, okay. And this time there was no sense of movement from one space to another. We were in a totally different space. And here is somewhere I just can't relate to anywhere on earth. It was a street made of crystals, and the houses alongside the streets were all made of crystals, and they had lights. The crystals would glow and illuminate the houses, and then the light seems to be naturally controlled. Like when it's getting darker, the crystals will glow brighter, and when it's like day, they will just simmer down and become natural crystals. And it was the end of the day, like the beginning of night, and we were walking down these streets made of crystals, and I could see the glow. At the end of the street, there was this fountain, and the fountain would rise as water and fall as fire. It will rise as water and then fall as fire. And when we got there, he asked me to extend my hand into the casket, the fall of fire, which I did. And when I did, the fire just illuminated my body. It was not like burning, it was just like illuminating. And I just felt my body, a body of light. And then he looked at me and he said, "This is your real essence. You are this light being."
So beautiful.
Yeah.
And while you're saying this, what is coming to me is the current situation in the world. So if we are able to access our parallel realities, then the reality which seems as reality, which is fearful, which is suffering, which is diseased, which is vulnerable to catching COVID and all that, we will rise above that, because we will come to realize that none of that is actually, it's delusional.
Yes.
We are living in an illusion, Yes. And it's such a beautiful way of looking at life, that there is a parallel other reality also existing, coexisting along with the present one.
Coexisting. And we do exist in those realities. And one of the things I do, I teach people at my institute, and I have this, what we call the school of mystery, of human mystery of existence. And one of the teachings is actually how to access your consciousness in a higher dimension and begin to interact with your own consciousness from a higher dimension, because that information is available to you. And it changes your life here. You know, people feel so alone. People feel like they are powerless, that nothing makes sense. And then when you begin to access your higher consciousness from a higher dimension, and you look around you, just like you said, you look around you, you see what is happening in the world today, then you understand, yeah, this is happening, and there are reasons why this is happening.
Yeah.
You know, it's a wake-up call.
It's a wake-up call. True.
It's a wake-up call.
Yeah, true.
So when you begin to feel uncomfortable, when you begin to feel like the devil is punishing you, what is the first thing that you say? Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you remember God.
Yeah. So what my next question is, Rex, is that you received this information from this Palladian, right? So what did you do with that information in terms of what happened in your life post that, with the information that you got?
You see, everything I've said to you so far is not even the beginning of this story.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Okay.
Okay. My shifting tide, this was like a prelude to my shifting tide. You know, my shifting tide happened after I came back to Brazil.
Okay.
And so this happened like some days after I came back to Brazil. I used to live like 2 blocks to a movie theater, and I love to go to those last, the last sessions of the movie of the show, and which I did. And then after the show, I was walking back to my apartment. And as I was walking back to my apartment, I began to feel this vibration in my body. And it's not like a vibration that you would feel this tingling sensation. No, this was like an electric vibration. And I thought and I felt something was wrong. Something was happening to me. I've never felt that before. And I began to quicken my step. I just wanted to get home. And the vibration kept rising and rising and rising. And it's like, when you imagine your cell phone vibrating. Now imagine your cell phone vibrating like 20 times. And that was the kind of vibration I was feeling in my body. And I just heard this voice in my head said, run.
Run.
Run. And I was like, at this point, I was like half a block away from my apartment. The vibration kept rising, 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 and I began to run. So I got to my apartment, opened the door, and I just took 1, 2 steps into the living room, and I literally exploded into billions of light. So I looked around me, and there was this explosion. I felt and I saw this explosion that was me. And then I looked around me, all I could see was particles, shimmering lights. And these lights were colorful, and they were just moving. And like the images you would see when you see the quantum field and the geometric forms and the vibrations. And then I tried to see myself, and there was no me. I just knew that I was the consciousness observing these particles of light, and those particles of light were me, or what used to be me. And I had no body. There was no physical body. And there was just these billions of light around me. And I could relate to me being that light. So from this moment, I saw my reality, past, present, future, unfold in that instance.
Oh,
And
geez.
that was where my shifting tide really happened at that moment, because I heard what we call at that moment my awakening. And I just remembered.
And you
I
were not,
remembered.
and you were not fearful at all?
You see, there is a there is a point we get in life that there are some experiences in life that takes us beyond what we know as fear. You know, fear is what we experience before an event. Once the event begins, it takes us beyond fear. And then we understand that there is no fear. There is nothing to be afraid of. We become afraid of the unknown. But once it begins to happen, it becomes the known. And once it becomes the known, then we are no longer afraid. So because I didn't know what was going to happen, I was just fearful of the vibration in my body. But when the explosion happened, I was in peace. There was no fear. So
beautiful.
That was where my life's work began. And today I bring all of these teachings, and I created 3 types of therapies that are used in Brazil and in other countries. The first is known as the Nexus therapy. And then the second is known as the transpersonal cosmology. And when I created the transpersonal cosmology, I also created the Therapists Without Borders. Just like you have the Doctors Without Borders, so I created the NGO, known in Brazil as Therapists Without Borders. And I have this group of volunteer therapists that I train to attend to people, to give emotional support freely to people. And we've attended to a lot more than 100,000 people giving emotional support. And we are still growing, we are still expanding. And this is what people need. You know, people need emotional support.
In today's times, for sure. In today's times.
Especially these days. So,
exactly.
So that is one of the work I do. And also I created another technique called the systemic triangle. The systemic triangle is where I bring this knowledge of the quantum field and this technology of accessing information. You know, you can actually dialogue with the consciousness of any human, alive physically or alive non-physically. You can actually dialogue with the consciousness of trees, of plants, of animals. You can dialogue with the consciousness of anything. Even your own company has an awareness, has a consciousness. You can dialogue with that consciousness. So this technique that I created called the systemic triangle helps people to access information through the quantum field and then bring about resolution through the quantum field. And then
my question comes to your experience and your journey with ayahuasca.
I knew you were going to ask that just right now.
That is something which is so exciting. And of course, there are lots and lots of misrepresentations of ayahuasca going around, you know, like people say it's dangerous, people say you should not consume it. And obviously it has also become very touristic these days. So, but I do know, having watched your film, I do know that you have looked at ayahuasca as on a very scientific plane, and you have references and you have done research as to how it actually scientifically helps a human body. So I would really like first to tell us, how did that journey begin and how were you instrumental in being a conduit to spread the word and to teach people ayahuasca?
You know, first I would like to say to people who perceive ayahuasca to be dangerous that they are right. They are absolutely right. Ayahuasca is so dangerous to the system that seeks to hold you within the perception of limited reality so that you are and you can be easily manipulated. It is dangerous to that system.
Okay. Okay.
Because,
People don't want, they don't want to shift from that because they want
yeah.
to believe that it is. You're right.
Ayahuasca is dangerous to the system that does not want you to experience your shifting tide.
Yeah.
Ayahuasca is the perfect instrument that can help you to experience your shifting tide. So let's take it from there. My experience with ayahuasca, it's it's another story. It's another part of my life that I would call my second awakening. Yeah.
Would love to hear. Would love to hear.
Okay. Okay, if we have time, let's go.
Yeah, we do. We can go ahead. Yeah.
This is what I consider my second awakening, and it also happened in Peru. After years of traveling to Peru, after the experience I narrated with the Pleiadian, I began to go to Peru almost every year, and actually began to take groups on pilgrimage to Peru almost every year. I still do. And on one of those trips, after the group left, I decided to spend a week extra. And then I went to an island called the Titicaca Lake. There is this island called the Takili Island on Titicaca Lake in Puno. So I went there, and you can see this lake, this beautiful blue lake. It's like the sea, actually. I was on the top of the mountain, and I could hear the wind strongly. And then this voice, the voice of a woman, said, "It is time you know ayahuasca." You have to understand that before this moment, I go to Peru every year, but I never had the call to experience ayahuasca. And people would come from all over the world to Peru to have this experience with ayahuasca. And even where I live in Brazil, people have invited me, but I just didn't feel that call. And then I heard this voice clearly. And at this point in my life, you have to understand, I no longer question, is this an illusion? Am I? Yeah, I understand this is real. So I went down to the Sacred Valley. There is a town in the Sacred Valley called Pisac. And I was in Pisac in a store, and the store owner is a lady that works with ayahuasca, coincidentally, because I knew people would come up to her, hug her, and say, the experience with you changed my life. And then I asked her, what do you do? She said, I work with ayahuasca. And I thought, just 2 days ago, I heard this voice saying it's time to know ayahuasca. Yeah. So it's time. Okay. So she invited me to her ceremony, and I went to this ceremony that is typical Shipibo. Shipibo is a tribe in Peru that is very known for their work with ayahuasca. So there I was in this dark room. There were just 2 of us. And then she was sitting right there with her husband, and they began the ceremony. And I had my first experience with ayahuasca. They call it the medicine, the ayahuasca medicine, because the reference is, it's a healing medicine. It has this healing properties. There are 2 plants. For those of you who don't know what ayahuasca is, maybe it's important you understand that there are 2 plants. One is called the mariri, the other is called the green leaf called chacrona. Here in Brazil, we call it jagubi, and then we have this green leaf called the chacrona, which is very rich in the property we call the DMT. The DMT, the human body produces the DMT also. So they would brew these plants together in a process with prayers and songs, and this will give birth to what we know as the ayahuasca medicine. It's a very sacred process. So this is the kind of technology, and this is how I prefer to refer to ayahuasca. It is a technology.
Technology.
It is a biotechnology. We have in the world today, we have the nanotechnology, but I can tell you this, ayahuasca is a biotechnology. It has an intelligence. There is an engineering, there is a natural biological engineering to ayahuasca. There is an intelligence to it, and I would explain that, and you would understand. So up until then, I didn't know ayahuasca, but in this experience, in the ceremony, something happened. I had my second awakening. When I took the medicine, the lady began to chant, and the songs, the frequency of song, because ayahuasca is light, you begin to see this light, what we call the quantum field. And then the song will create the vibration, the resonance with the light, and then the magic begins to happen. And the doorway of perception opens. The pineal gland that connects you to the cosmos is activated. And then I began to see reality, the beginning of existence. The planet.
Beautiful. Wow, so beautiful.
And I could see my reality and my relationships. It works very much on the level of relationships, how you relate to existence and how you relate to yourself and how you relate to people. I can tell you something, you know, you can go through a therapy session, a psychotherapy session, and just tell stories to the therapist. They would listen to you. They would give you maybe some directions for contemplation, but you know, you can even lie to yourself. You can lie to the therapist. But when you go into an ayahuasca session, you don't tell any story to ayahuasca. Ayahuasca will tell you the story.
Okay. And, so basically your subconscious opens up, is it?
It opens up.
Yeah.
Totally. And you begin to see your reality and the lies that you tell yourself and the things that you do in your relationships with people. This is and you know what? I think this is why people are afraid of ayahuasca.
Yeah, because they don't want to touch upon those areas which are hurtful, painful. They just suppress them and they go and sit in your subconscious mind. Okay.
Yeah. And it was in this ceremony that I had my call to work with ayahuasca. During the ceremony, I felt a hand touching me. And I opened my eyes and there was this old lady. The same voice I heard at the island of Takili.
Okay.
The voice that said, "It is time, you know, ayahuasca." It was the same voice. And there was this old lady holding my hands, touching my hand, and she was cleansing me with this, what I later got to know as the condor feather. So she was just saying, speaking in this language I couldn't understand. So I looked at her like, I just can't understand what you're saying. And then she touched me and she continued speaking in the language and I could understand her. And she took my hands and she put the condor feather in my hands. And she said, "I would like you to cleanse and help people heal, just like I'm doing to you right now, if you so choose." And then she disappeared. The lady conducting the ceremony saw her and she said, "Rex, tu madre ayahuasca. It's like your mother ayahuasca."
Oh.
And, you know, I didn't know what to think of this experience until I got back to Brazil. And I decided I will invite friends who had experience in conducting ayahuasca ceremony, which I did. And I thought they were going to conduct the ceremony. So I just sat there. I drank the medicine. And when I sat there during the ceremony in the middle of the night, The space was a little dark. We had candle lit, and this old lady appeared to me right in the middle. And I saw her, and I got up, and she began to take me around the room, and she would show me what the people's problems were, their challenges, why they came to the ceremony. She would show me these images, these visions of their lives. And sometimes she would show me their body, what is happening within their body, the illness, and she would sing. And I was the only one that could hear the songs, and I would repeat those songs.
My God.
And
so she
people
was
were
actually
looking
training you. She trained you.
Yes, she was training me.
Yeah.
And my friends were looking at me like, what is that? You know, they could hear the songs, and they saw me moving around doing things they've never seen me do before, because that was supposed to be my first ceremony after what happened to me in Peru. I was already doing it. I was repeating the songs she was singing. And in the next day in the morning, I asked people, do you have this problem, health problem? Yeah, they would say. And do you have this emotional problem with your family? Yes. Do you have this conflict? Yes. How are you feeling? I'm feeling a lot better. And I thought, this is real. Remember, I'm this kind of person. You have to show me, not just tell me. You have to show me that this is
That's
real.
what brings me to another question, that once you discovered ayahuasca and once you were obviously trained by her, did you go into finding the scientific relevance to it? Did you find a scientific relevance to it?
Yeah. You know, later I understand that was one of the reasons why she shows me, because she knew that I would bring that context. Because I've always been a researcher.
Yeah.
I created 3 therapeutic techniques. So she knew that I would bring that context of the therapeutic approach to the use of ayahuasca and the scientific understanding of what ayahuasca can do. And that is what I created as what we know today as a shamanic dream retreat. Ayahuasca is really sending this invitation to people because it's an intelligence, it's a biotechnology that can really help people unplug from the limitation of their perception of reality and reconnect with reality as it is, you know, with the cosmos as it is, with their life as it is, heal relationships. It's absolutely marvelous in healing relationships. And isn't it one of the greatest illness in the human history, relationship?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yes.
So coming back to what we try and find in Shifting Tides is mostly people go through really traumatic events to come to a turnaround in their lives, and that's when they start walking either a spiritual path or a path of their higher purpose, or a path that really gives them fulfilling and satisfying lives after that. But in your case, as I see, right from the time you were born, you are being shown a direction to walk into, and you have been having guidance coming from various people, starting from the Palladian to the old woman who guided you into ayahuasca. So it's very evident that you were actually chosen to be able to be of service to humanity in one way or another. But as per when you look at your life, do you think that this was what you were meant to be or do? In the sense, is this your real higher purpose?
Absolutely, absolutely. How do I know that? How do I know that this is what I was meant to be? I will tell you this honestly. If I wasn't doing this, I am this kind of person that life has to make sense to me. And I'm sure a lot of people will relate to this. there are many people out there who looks at their life and it just doesn't make sense. You wake up, you sleep, you wake up, you eat, you go to work, and then you do this, do that, run around. At the end of the day, you sleep, and then you wake up, and at a point you begin to feel that there is much more to life. And I used to be one of these people. So I consider myself very lucky that I've been called to do what I do, because I wake up every day and my life makes a lot of sense. And I don't see what I do as working. I see it as living. And I do it tirelessly. People would come like all day, all night. Sometimes we'll go into a 9 days retreat. Recently, I started training people using this technique of the shamanic dream retreat to become healers, to work with the ayahuasca medicine in their countries, in their towns. And we have quite a number of people that I've trained, taking the blessing of this medicine and working in a very safe way. And my life makes sense to me. I wake up happy. I go to bed tired, but happy.
How nice. So fortunate, Rex. So fortunate. Really blessed. Really blessed. Really blessed.
I feel blessed.
Rex, I would like to ask you to give a message. What message would you like to give to the audience, especially looking at the current scenario of where we are? There is a lot of suffering, pain, and hurt all over the world. So what is that one message you would like to offer to people?
From my heart to your heart, for those of you listening, I would love to say this. There is no separation of what you consider to be spiritual or spiritual experience. Everything is spiritual. I want you to think about your life as an integrated experience, because maybe someone watching this program will think, oh, I sell shoes in a store, and there is nothing spiritual about that. Or I am a civil servant, and there is nothing spiritual about it. I want you to understand this. There is everything spiritual about selling shoes or clothes or selling food. There is everything spiritual about being a civil servant, because it is an opportunity. It's not about the shoe you sell or the clothes you sell. It's about the people you sell it to.
Yeah.
And you as a civil servant, it's not about shuffling papers. It's about the people that you serve. So everything you do in life is an opportunity for you to express love. So when you express love to someone who walks into your store to sell shoes, just listen to them, make them feel better about themselves, about life, give them hope. Just listen to them, tell them it's okay, give them attention, treat them like a king. And when they will leave your store feeling good about themselves, about life, what can be more spiritual than that? Sometimes people go into a temple and they talk to the priest, and the priest doesn't give them that attention, and they leave not feeling that good. So you are the priest, your store is the temple. So remember that. You, the civil servants, your office is the temple, you are the priest. So there is everything spiritual about everything you do. You, a mother, taking care of your children at home. And sometimes you think, maybe I should be doing more with my life. You are doing a lot with your life.
That's the most spiritual. That's the biggest spiritual work a woman can do.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
See your life as spiritual. You are in divine service. And then with the challenges going on around the world today, when you come to that difficult moment, when you begin to feel the pain, the emotional pain of what is happening in the world or what is happening in your life, and you feel confused and you don't know what to do, before you do anything, before you take any action or reaction, just take a moment and ask yourself this question: what would love do in this situation? What would love do in this situation? How would love respond to this situation? So when you answer that question from the depth of your heart, you would always know what to do. You would always know what to say.
So true.
What would love say in this situation? You will always know what to say. What would love do in this situation? You would always know what to do. And believe me, when you begin to do this, you would always be on the right path to fulfilling your life's mission as a divine being, having a human experience.
Excellent. Excellent. That was wonderful. So encouraging, Rex. So encouraging. Thank you so much.
Thank you
for this very enlightening conversation. And I think extremely mysterious because lots of people are going to question, but very, very interesting. Very interesting. I felt as I was listening to a fiction story. So it was beautiful. It was beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a blessing to be here, and really, and from my heart to your hearts, all of you listening to this, feel blessed, celebrate life. Thank you.
Thank you. Story time over. So that was Rex Thomas. I'm sure all of you are glued to your seats listening to that phenomenal, adventurous trail of Rex Thomas. With that, we come to the end of today's episode. With another story, we will be back next week.